Welcome to English BookCast. Today we're going deep, really deep, into ancient Near Eastern texts relating to the Old Testament.
Edited by James B. Pritchard.
Right, James E. Pritchard. And wow, this book, it's basically the bedrock for understanding like all these ancient civilizations around, ancient Israel, a whole bunch of writings, never seen before stuff, giving us a peek into those worlds.
Indispensable, truly. Anyone who wants to grasp the culture, religion, the legal systems, everything of the ancient Near East, this is where you start. Direct voices from Egypt, Mesopotamia, the whole region.
And for you, our listener, you're the one who brought this gem to us. Get ready. It's going to be a ride. We're hitting those big themes, those stories that weave through these texts. How did they see creation, the divine? What were their laws like, their myths, even their own historical records? It's all here. And hey, while we're at it, if you dig these deep dives, join the English BookCast channel. Share it around. Helps us grow, bring you more awesome content.
Ancient New Eastern texts, the scope is just mind-blowing. Inscriptions from Egypt, afterlife beliefs, Sumerian hymns probably used in rituals, epic poems from Mesopotamia tackling those big timeless questions, legal stuff, super detailed showing how their societies worked, and historical accounts, their take on the events that shaped everything. It's multifaceted, truly, how we get to see these cultures.
All right, let's break it down. Egyptian understanding of authority, creation. It's powerful. Right there in those ancient documents, there's this one text that just jumps out about the power of language.
The Egyptians, what hits you is their belief in the spoken word, like literally bringing things into being by saying them. This text, it shows Adam Re, the god naming parts of his own body, and boom, the innate is born. The 9 main deities, just from his words. Not a physical creation like we might think, but utterance, pure creation through sound, language, shaping reality. It makes you rethink how ancient people saw existence itself.
Whoa, yeah. So for them, a word wasn't just describing something, it was doing something. Super active, like creative power. And this idea, it goes into their view of life and death, those cycles, right?
Cyclical, absolutely. That was their worldview. Death, they linked it with Osiris, called it yesterday, like, it's gone. Rebirth, new life. That was the sun, Horus, rising. Tomorrow. A constant cycle, daily, eternal, the core of their beliefs. It's in their funerals, how they saw kingship, everything.
Their mythology, it's full of these awesome stories about the gods clashing, like Horus and Seth. Geb steps in to mediate, right? What does that tell us about Egyptian society?
Big picture. That myth, it's not just a story, it's a blueprint, like a divine plan for order on Earth. Geb, the Earth god, he ends the fight, right?
Yeah.
Gives Seth Upper Egypt, Horus gets Lower Egypt. Division, then they reconcile, 2 lands become one. Mirrors Egypt's own history, how it unified. And the Pharaoh, he's that unifier, keeping the cosmic peace. Myths mirroring politics, it's fascinating.
Like the divine realm setting the stage for how they rule down here. And then there's Ptah, his creation story. Totally different angle, focused on like thoughts and words making the world.
Ptah's creation is mind-blowing. It puts the spotlight on thinking and speaking, on intellect. This text says Ptah, he imagined the world, the gods, all of it in his heart, his mind, his intelligence. Then he spoke their names and bam, existence. Different from myths where it's physical, like giving birth. Ptah's is about intention design, mind and language creating order. Makes you wonder how different cultures imagined creation itself, what they valued in that process.
So the heart, the mind, and then the tongue as the tool. Powerful metaphor for creation, both divine, maybe even human. And this divine speech, it wasn't just for making the big shot gods, was it? Nope, not at all. This text goes on. Ptah, with that same powerful speech, he made the Ka spirits, the Hemset spirits. Not major gods, but spiritual beings. Their job, making sure the world was fed, everyone taken care of. Shows how Egyptians saw it, divine power reaching down into the nitty-gritty of existence, gods keeping things running smoothly for everyone. Holistic, right? That view of divine action.
And it's wild how that divinely ordained order, it's all wrapped up in their ethics, like the creative command and then justice, injustice, peace, sin. It's all connected.
Insightful, yeah, how the Egyptians saw that link. Divine order, human morality, intertwined. Follow the divine command and you get justice, peace, do the opposite. Injustice, sin, even death. Morality is woven right into their cosmology. Being good wasn't just like a social rule, it was fundamental to creation itself.
Shifting gears a bit, a huge part of Egyptian belief was the afterlife and this constant fight against chaos. The pulsing of the dragon, that text, it's a vivid picture of this cosmic battle. Totally. That text gives us a peek into the sun god Re's journey. Every day through the sky, every night through the underworld, a dangerous place. And every night he faces a pocket. Darkness, trying to stop the sun from being reborn, not just a metaphor for the Egyptians. No, sir. If Apophis won, catastrophe, the whole world in eternal darkness, no order.
So those rituals in the temples, they weren't just for show. They were doing something real, helping re-win, keeping life and order going in Egypt.
Exactly. Repelling Apophis, it was a big deal in the temples, especially places like Karnak, Amun-Re's temple. Spells, chanting, rituals, all to weaken and defeat chaos itself. Those priests, they believed they were maintaining that cosmic balance, protecting Egypt from destruction.
And some of that stuff is pretty dramatic, like burning those little wax figures with names of enemies on them. What was that all about?
Sympathetic magic, that's what we call it, like effects, they'd write names of the pharaoh's enemies, living or dead, sometimes in a box, make little wax figures, one for Apophis too, burn them at sunrise, sunset, those key moments for Re. Destroying those figures, it was harming the real enemies, weakening Apophis so Re could keep going. Order over chaos wins. It shows that connection, physical to spiritual, ritual actions, having real-world impact.
Their worldview, right? Physical and spiritual, all mixed up. Human actions, ritual actions, having a real effect on those cosmic forces. And then there's that thing about Horus's eye, the one that got hurt, and the moon. How does that fit in?
Another cool bit of their mythology. Horus's eye, it gets injured fighting Seth. Then it's healed, restored, and they connected that to the moon, how it waxes, wanes, comes back full. The eye of Horus healed, it became a symbol. Protection, restoration, royal power. It all weaves together sky events, divine battles, how people down here are doing.
Hero tales. We've got more. Like Seth's role in another part of repulsing the dragon. He's actually the one fighting the serpent down in the underworld so the sun can be reborn. Different from him fighting Horus on.
You picked up on that. Good eye. Yeah, with Horus and Seth, they're rivals, right? But here, Seth's important, even if it's still a fight. He's defending order against that serpent, that chaos in the underworld. It shows the ancient gods, they could be complex. Their roles, what they represented, it could change depending on the story. Maybe like nature itself, full of contradictions.
Makes sense. And in that whole Horus-Seth dispute, the goddess Neith, she steps in, right? Her message comes through Thoth. What's the big deal with her divine decree?
Neith, she's wise, ancient, respected. She's like, enough. Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, he delivers her message. It's clear. Osiris is rightful heir. The one who gets his job, it's got to be Horus, his son. The other gods, the Ennead, they hear this and they all agree. Horus is legit. The conflict's got to end. Order has to be restored.
Ultimate power to Horus, backed up by the rest of the divine crew. Switching to some other Egyptian myths, tales, we see the pharaoh getting recognized by the Ennead. How's that connection made? What do the texts say?
After Horus wins, orders back, the Ennead, they look at the pharaoh, the human king, and they say, okay, you're the great of overflow, lord of provisions.
Yeah.
Basically, they're saying, you're in charge of making sure this land is prosperous, people have food, divine backing for the pharaoh's job, keeping things running smoothly. It's a direct line, from Horus restoring order to the pharaoh ruling. Divine right, essential for Egypt's well-being.
Okay, so the pharaoh's not just some guy appointed by the gods. He's like divinely chosen to lead. And we've got this story. Seth challenges Horus again, this time on the central island. Adam himself intervenes. What happens there?
Seth's not giving up, right? Challenges Horus on the central island, tries to grab power again. But Adam, the creator god from Heliopolis, he shuts it down. Seth gets dragged in chains. Adam's like, seriously? Still trying to steal what belongs to Horus? Even Seth has to admit, Horus, son of Isis and Osiris, that's the rightful heir. More proof that Horus is legit. Divine support is on his side.
Reinforcing, yeah, Horus and by connection, the pharaoh's authority, it's all divine. And then the pharaoh and Re, the sun god, they're symbolically linked, right? What's that all about?
The pharaoh, he wasn't just some ruler appointed by the gods. He was the son of Re, literally. Like Re's presence, his power, right here on earth. Core of Egyptian kingship, this idea. They believed when the pharaoh died, his spirit went right back into Re, his creator, his father. Returning to the source, the cosmic order keeps going. Pharaoh, as god, it shows how special his role was, essential for keeping balance between heaven and earth.
Wow. And, we get a look into how people felt back then, all those anxieties, loyalties, from this story about a court official. A king dies, he freaks out, runs away. The new king, Senusert the Hister, takes over, and he comes back, swearing loyalty. What does that tell us about how stable Egypt was back then?
That story, it's human, Not just kings and gods, but real people's experiences. This official, he's scared when the old king dies. Maybe chaos, maybe he'll lose favor, who knows? Then Senusert V is firmly in power, things are stable, and he cautiously comes back, pledges loyalty. Shows how important a strong, recognized ruler was. Order, confidence, the whole elite needed that. History, it's those personal stories too, amidst all the big events.
People living through those times, yeah. And in those historical texts, there's a prayer asking for trustworthy messengers from all over the place. Seems like a little detail, but what does it tell us about what the pharaoh worried about and the challenges of ruling this huge kingdom?
That prayer, it shows how vital communication was, knowing what's going on, especially in a massive kingdom like Egypt. The pharaoh wants exact and reliable young men from everywhere. Kudem, Kent Keshu, the Fenku lands, all over. He needs to know what's happening. Potential problem brewing. It's hard, ruling a vast territory back then, no instant messaging. Logistics, politics, keeping control. It was a constant challenge.
Building an empire, keeping it running without phones or internet. Yikes. Okay, ancient Near Eastern texts. It also has some really cool Egyptian tales, like the two brothers and the deceitful wife.
Yeah.
What do those stories reveal about Egyptian society, their values?
Those stories, popular back then, they're like windows into their world. Social dynamics, morals, what people experience. The two brothers, it's about family, loyalty, betrayal, false accusations. Shows what they worried about, deceit within the family, needing justice, the gods intervening. These tales, they weren't just entertainment, they reinforced social norms, ethics, all that.
Right, fictional, but tapping into real anxieties, the moral landscape of their lives. And then there's Weneman, famous story. He's on this mission to Byblos, needs wood for Amon's ceremonial barge. But it seems like things have changed. Egypt's not as powerful as it used to be, right?
Weneman's journey, it's a sign of the times. Egyptian influence in the Levant, it's fading. He's supposed to get this cedar wood, super important for the god Amon's bark, but he's got no money, no official papers. The ruler of Byblos disrespects him. Totally different from when Egypt was calling the shots, demanding tribute.
But when Amon, he doesn't back down. He's bold, saying Amon owns the sea, Lebanon, all of it. What's his strategy here?
It's clever. He plays the religion card big time. He's like, look, anything sailing on the river belongs to Amon. He owns the sea. He owns Lebanon. He's saying those payments Byblos made before, that wasn't tribute. It was rent for using Amon's stuff. And now Amon can bless them directly if they give him what he wants. Divine power plus self-interest, a powerful combo.
Religion, a powerful force, even when the political landscape is shifting. And then we've got Khonsu, the carrier out of plains in Thebes. Yeah. He goes all the way to Bekton to heal a princess. Egyptian gods, they had a long reach, huh?
They did. Khonsu, he heals this princess, possessed or something, in Bekton. It's his divine power, they believe. Not only does she get better, but Bekton sends a ton of tribute to the god. And when his statue finally goes back to Thebes, more gifts. Prestige, influence, the Theban god's power known far and wide.
And on the intellectual side, they had the House of Life, a kind of like ancient university and library, right? What kind of knowledge was in there?
The House of Life, that was the hub. Scribes, scholars, they were cranking out texts, copying them, storing them, rituals, medical stuff, astronomy, and those souls of read texts. So super important, maybe even containing like the essence of the creator god. Deep knowledge, spiritual power, all in one place.
We also see Elephantine in southern Egypt, connected to the primeval mound of creation. Why was that place so special to them?
Elephantine, furthest south you could go in Egypt proper. It had a special meaning. They saw it as connected to that first piece of land, rising from the waters of chaos, like the very beginning of the universe in their belief system. Sacred, important, tied to the core of their worldview.
And the hymn to the Nile, it's beautiful how it captures how vital the river was to them. Khnum, the god, he's linked to it too, right? What are some of the big ideas in that hymn?
Hymn to the Nile, it's pure gratitude, awe. This river, it was everything to them. The hymn praises its life-giving power, how it made the land fertile, gave them food, supported all life, and they connect its abundance to Tum, the god, the one who makes the Nile flood every year. Divine blessing, the source of their prosperity.
Okay, moving on to those mortuary texts, the pyramid texts. At first, they were just for the pharaoh, right? Promising him immortality, merging with Osiris, Horus. Did that change over time?
Yeah. Early on, Old Kingdom pyramid texts were a pharaoh-only thing, inscribed right on those pyramid walls. Spells, rituals, all that, to make sure the dead king got to the afterlife, became one with Osiris, Horus. But as time went on, towards the end of the Old Kingdom into the Middle Kingdom, things changed. These texts, or similar ones, they started popping up in tombs of queens, even some high-ranking non-royals, more people hoping for eternal life and getting access to the means to achieve it.
And there's the negative confession in those mortuary texts. Really interesting look into their ethics, what they thought about judgment after death. What were some of the things the deceased would say?
The negative confession, big part of the afterlife journey and the Book of the Dead and such. You're standing there before the gods judging you, and you got to list all these sins you didn't commit. It tells us so much about their moral code, what they saw as wrong, what you had to do to get a good judgment. It's all there. Harming others, stealing, lying, disrespecting the gods, a whole picture of their values.
Accountability even after you're gone. Ethics mattered. Big time. Now, eastward ho. Sumerian civilization, their myths, epics. They've got their own creation myth, with Enki and Ninhursag. How does their version stack up against the Egyptian ones?
Enki, god of wisdom, fresh water, and Ninhursag, the mother goddess. Their creation story, it's less about the spoken word like the Egyptians had. It's more about these two deities interacting, their creative powers, especially with plants, animals. Enki waters the land. Ninhursag brings forth life from that water. It's more biological how they saw creation happen.
Less talking, more divine action, fertility, bringing life into being. And they've got that famous Sumerian flood story with Ziusudra. What's the gist of that ancient tale?
The gods decide to wipe out humanity. Big flood, the whole deal. But Enki, he's wise, compassionate. He secretly warns Ziusudra, a good king, tells him to build a huge boat, save himself, and some of every living thing. The flood hits, devastation, then the waters recede, Ziusudra lands safe. The gods give him immortality. He's got to preserve life, plants, and animals, keep it going. And, this story, it's got those striking similarities to other flood myths. The Bible, Noah's Ark, all that.
Similar stories popping up in different cultures, maybe shared memories, maybe a real event seen through different lenses. The Sumerian epic, Gilgamesh and Aga, this one's different. It's about humans, no gods directly involved. What's the historical political significance there?
Gilgamesh and Aga, unique among those early Sumerian hero tales. It's Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, versus Aga, king of Kish. A human conflict, city-state rivalry, no divine intervention. Historically, it might show us like a snapshot of those early Sumerian city-states, their power struggles. Politically, it's amazing. We see Uruk's elders deciding, then the warriors deciding, like an early political assembly deliberation. Really interesting.
Early days of political organization, fascinating. Then we've got the death of Gilgamesh, showing a different side of the hero, more thoughtful, facing death.
Death of Gilgamesh. It's the contrast to those action-packed tales. This one's about mortality, the end that comes for everyone, even Gilgamesh, all these great deeds, accomplishments, but in the end, same fate as everyone else. Limits of human strength, the universality of death. It's a powerful poem.
Sobering, yeah. Even the most legendary figures, they can't escape that shared human destiny. And Inanna's descent to the netherworld, we can't leave that one out. Full of symbolism, life, death, the power of the gods, all that. What happens on her journey?
Inanna, queen of heaven and earth, Sumerian goddess. She goes down into the underworld, ruled by her sister, Ereshkigal. Each gate she passes, she has to take off something. Clothes, jewelry, like losing power, identity as she goes deeper. Finally, she reaches Ereshkigal, gets judged, killed, hung up on a hook. But Enki, he creates these two beings, neither male nor female, to appeal to Ereshkigal. They get Inanna released with help from Ninshubur, her loyal servant, and other gods. Inanna is revived, comes back to the living world. Life, death, rebirth, the cycles of power, fertility, it's all there.
Complex story, lots to unpack about their cosmology, those Sumerian gods. Now, over to the Akkadians, their creation epic, the Enuma Elish.
Yeah.
How does their story of the universe starting differ from what we've seen so far?
Enuma Elish, it's a wild ride. Starts with Apsu and Tiamat, primordial waters, the very beginning. And there's this clash, old gods versus new gods. Apsu represents the old guard, and things escalate, cosmic battle time. Marduk, a young god, he becomes the champion. He takes down Tiamat, who's this monstrous being, and from her body, he creates heaven and earth, humans, made from the blood of Kingu, Tiamat's consort. And in the end, Marduk's the top dog, his temple, Esagila, built in Babylon. Divine conflict, hierarchy of the gods. That's how the Akkadians saw creation.
So not just a god deciding let there be light, but a battle, a new order emerging, Marduk on top. And they've got their own version of Gilgamesh, right? Building on the Sumerian tales, but going deeper. What are some of the big themes they tackle?
Akkadian epic of Gilgamesh. It takes those Sumerian stories and explores those deep, timeless themes. Friendship, the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Loss, the crushing blow when Enkidu dies, fear of death, that grip it has on Gilgamesh, and his quest for immortality, which ultimately fails. It's about being human, knowing you're going to die, trying to find meaning in a limited lifespan.
That part with Utnapishtim, the guy who survived the flood, he's got eternal life, right? That's a key moment in Gilgamesh's quest. What does he learn from that encounter?
Gilgamesh, desperate for immortality, he finds Utnapishtim, who got eternal life from the gods after the flood. Utnapishtim tells the flood story, how he got his gift. But then he tests Gilgamesh, stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh fails. Then there's this magical plant, can restore youth. He can't hold on to that either. Harsh lesson, death is inevitable for mortals. You can't fight the divine order. And dreams, they're important in the epic, like messages from the gods, glimpses into their will.
Acceptance, coming to terms with being human, powerful stuff. We've also got the epic of Era and Isham, divine drama with real consequences for humanity. What's that story about?
Era and Isham, it's about this god, Era, on a rampage, destroying everything. He tricks Isham, usually a good guy, protector of humans, into leaving his post. Isham's gone. Era and his Sabiri, these war gods, they unleash chaos, violence, the world's a mess. Isham comes back, tries to fix things, but the damage is done. It shows how powerful and scary the gods could be, how fragile human life was compared to them.
Even the gods had their conflicts, their moods, and humans got caught in the crossfire. And the myth of Zu, this guy steals the tablets of destiny, some serious divine power there. What's at stake in this cosmic heist?
Zu, this monstrous bird god, he steals the tablets of destiny. These tablets, they held the decrees of the universe, what kept everything in order. Zu taking them, it's chaos. The balance of power is shattered, existence itself is threatened. The gods, they got to get those tablets back. Ninurta, Ningirsu, Marduk. Different versions say different heroes, but they succeed. Order is restored. It's that constant struggle, keeping the cosmos running smoothly against forces that want to break it.
Divine power struggle, fate of the universe hanging in the balance. And then we've got the myth of the eagle and the serpent, more like a fable, right? Trust, betrayal, what's the lesson there?
Eagle and serpent, it's a cautionary tale. They start as buddies, swear an oath, help each other out. But the eagle, he breaks his word, eats the serpent's babies. Betrayal leads to revenge, and in the end, the eagle gets his comeuppance. Keep your promises, don't be a backstabber, that's the message. Consequences, even in the animal world.
Timeless wisdom. Okay, north we go to the Hurrians. The kingship in heaven, their myth cycle. It's about divine rulers, but it's not exactly peaceful, is it? What happens in that power struggle?
Hurrian kingship in heaven, it's brutal. Alali starts as king, gets overthrown by Anu. Anu gets overthrown and castrated by Kamarbi. Kamarbi then tries to have a baby god. Swallows Anu's, well, hoping Teshub, the storm god, will be born. Teshub does emerge, fights Kamarbi, wins, becomes top god. It doesn't stop there. Conflicts with the sea god, a stone giant, a dragon named Iluyankas, who Teshub defeats with help from the goddess Inara. Lots of trickery involved. A violent, constant fight for power. That's how they saw the divine realm.
Yikes. Not a stable pantheon. And the myth of Telepenus, he's the fertility god, and he goes missing. What happens when he disappears?
Telepenus, super important god, fertility, crops growing, people and animals thriving, it all depended on him. He vanishes, and it's bad news. Land's barren, nothing grows, everyone's suffering. They gotta find him, bring him back. God searching, rituals, the whole works. Shows how much they relied on the gods, especially for the basics. Survival. Telepenus comes back, fertility is restored, life goes on.
The ancient world, their connection to nature, so direct, the gods had to be on their side, literally for them to survive. Now, Ugarit, Canaanite culture. The Baal cycle, famous one. What are the big conflicts, the themes in those stories? Baal cycle. It's all about Baal, the storm god, rising to power. He's got enemies, Yam, the sea god, Mot, death itself. Baal defeats Yam, builds his temple with help from this divine craftsman, Kutharwakasis. Then he fights Mot, gets dragged down to the underworld, but he comes back, defeats death, classic hero stuff. Order versus chaos, life versus death, fertility, it's all there. And goddesses, Anat, Asherah, they help Baal out, play big roles.
Baal winning, it means life wins, over chaos, over death. Essential for everyone, gods and humans. And then there's the Epic of Carrot, about a human king on a divine mission. What's his story? King Carrot, his whole family dies, it's tragic, he's heartbroken, no heir. The god El tells him, go find a wife, start a new family. Divine mandate, but it's not easy. The epic is about this quest, the challenges, Carrot finally finding a wife, having kids. But then he gets sick, more divine drama, exploring themes of kingship, divine favor, keeping the dynasty going. And the idea that even with the gods on your side, life can be tough.
No easy rides, even for kings. And the Tale of Aquat, this one asks some big questions about life, death, the gods, what they want. What's the story there?
Akkad, he's a hunter, and he's got this amazing bow, super powerful, one of a kind. Agadat, the goddess, she wants it, offers him immortality in exchange. But Akkad, he says no, he doesn't think she can actually give him eternal life, and he values his human life. Asanat is furious, she has him killed to get the bow. It's a story about what it means to be mortal, what it means to be a god, the limits of divine power, the consequences when humans defy them, and the idea that maybe, to a god, human life isn't that precious.
Chilling, yeah. Okay, let's switch gears. We're getting into those legal texts. Mesopotamia, Asia Minor. What did those law collections tell us about how those societies work, their ideas about justice?
Those ancient laws, the laws of Eshnunna, Hammurabi's Code, the Hittite laws, they're gold mines. They show us social structures, hierarchies, what they valued, how they kept things running smoothly. Family law, property, crime, business deals, it's all in there. How they settled disputes, kept order. Fascinating stuff.
Give us some examples. From the laws of Eshnunna, what were some of the things they were worried about?
Laws of Eshnunna, early 2nd millennium BCE, they dealt with everyday stuff. Prices of goods, rentals, what happens if an ox gores someone. Family matters too. Betrothal agreements, splitting property in divorce cases. A glimpse into their daily lives, what mattered legally in that Mesopotamian city-state.
Hammurabi's Code, that's the famous one.
Yeah.
Super well-preserved, influential. What are some of the key parts that tell us about Babylonian society?
Hammurabi's Code, it's a big one, covers tons of stuff. Stealing, property damage, farming, all kinds of contracts. And of course, an eye for an eye, that principle, lex talionis. If you injure someone, they can do the same to you, though they often use fines instead. And your social status mattered. Different punishments depending on who you were. Hierarchy, top to bottom, marriage, divorce, inheritance, it's all detailed. A look into Babylonian families, their social order.
A whole system, yeah, regulating everything, showing their structured society. What about the Hittites over in Anatolia? Anything different about their laws?
Hittite laws, they're similar to Mesopotamian law in some ways, but they've got their own quirks. Different punishments for free people versus slaves, rules about serving in the temples, religious crimes showing how important religion was to them. And sometimes, instead of an eye for an eye, they'd go for restitution, paying someone back, even for serious stuff. Different from Hammurabi's Code in that regard.
Interesting to see those variations, different cultures, different approaches, even though they're in the same region. And then there's those documents from the practice of law, from Egypt mostly. They didn't have big law codes like Mesopotamia, right? So how do they do justice?
Egypt, yeah. No big code of laws. They had royal decrees, what the pharaoh said, and then different officials, courts making decisions. Mothin, that concept, it was huge for them. Cosmic order, truth, justice, all wrapped up in one. We do have decrees from pharaohs setting legal precedents, giving special privileges, like exempting temples from certain labor duties.
And we see people being put on trial, accused of crimes. What kind of stuff got you in serious trouble back then?
Crimes against the state, that was the big one. Conspiracies, rebellion, anything threatening the pharaoh's power. Guilty, big trouble. Sometimes people would even commit suicide. It was an admission of guilt, a way to avoid further punishment. Shows you the pharaoh was supreme, don't mess with him.
Power centralized at the top, big time. And we see records of more mundane things too, like buying property. What do those documents tell us about daily life, legal stuff?
Oh yeah, those everyday transactions, they're important. Buying and selling slaves, contracts, documents about bail. It's how the law worked on the ground for regular folks. Doing business, paying debts, keeping things fair, all that.
Law in action, not just abstract rules. All right, let's look at some Egyptian historical texts. We've got that early record, a seal, talking about the tribute of Asia. What does that tell us about Egypt's early interactions with their neighbors?
Those early records, even from way back, the Old Kingdom, they show Egypt wasn't isolated. Tribute of Asia, that suggests some kind of relationship, maybe economic, maybe political, exchanging goods, asserting influence, who knows. And later on, Snefru, his inscriptions, they talk about sending expeditions to Phoenicia, getting wood, trade routes, needing resources from other places. It was all going on.
From the start, Egypt was connected, not just chilling in the desert. And then we've got the story of Apophis, Hyksos ruler, and Sequenri, the Egyptian king. Conflict. What was the cause? What were the consequences?
Apophis and Sequenri, that's a key moment. The Hyksos, foreigners, they'd taken over parts of Egypt. It was politics, power, cultural clashes, a whole mess. Apophis, he challenges Sequenri's authority, and he mocks the Egyptian gods. Amen in particular. That's a no-no. Leads to war, Egypt fighting to kick out the Hyksos, reclaim their land.
Foreign rule, resistance, all that shaped how Egypt saw itself. Thutmose III, his account of the Battle of Megiddo. It's detailed, shows off Egyptian military power, their empire building. What does he emphasize in his inscription?
Thutmose III, his inscription, it's classic propaganda.